thank you for joining us today. I'm Lacey. I'm the community manager of Shadow's Edge, which is a free mobile game created by the Digging Deep project for mental health and social emotional learning. Today, we're going to be talking about mental health screenings. We haven't talked about that at Digging Deep so far, but we're more specifically going to be referring to a tool created by Connected Mind, which is a leading innovator in the realm of mental health screenings. And I'm here today with two members of the Connected Mind team, Peggy Banks and Kathy. Kathy, could you pronounce your last name for me?
It's Rochelle.
Rochelle.
Yeah.
Okay. And thank you. And to start off, could you each introduce yourselves so that our audience can get to know you a little better and what you do?
Sure. I'm the VP of Community Outreach, and I really focus on trying to get Connected Mind into the hands of schools and the community and build relationships so that we can continue to focus on and improve mental health for people.
I'm Kathy, and I'm more on the tech side of the product. So I work as a business analyst, which primarily focused on testing and quality assurance, some data analysis. I also, in my spare time, do some marketing support, which is kind of interesting, but it's fun. It's a little change. So I develop content, both training videos, explainer videos, and so forth. That's it.
Thank you so much, you two. And I'm so excited that you guys are here on the first day of fall. It's my favorite day of the year, and I'm so excited to spend it with you guys. So
Thank you.
So our team at Digging Deep chose to talk about mental health screenings this month because it's inevitable that each of us will face a mental or emotional health challenge at some point in our lives. Because not only are mental health issues common and with 1 in 5 people suffering from a mental health condition, many individuals are not even aware that they are suffering from a mental health issue. And as a result, many people go without their mental health needs being treated, leading to poor physical health, loss of productivity, substance use, et cetera, the list goes on. And whether it is our first time going through something like depression or anxiety, or if it's a recurring challenge, finding a way out of that darkness can feel like a really overwhelming task at times. And so for my first question for the Connected Mind team, I was hoping you could explain what a mental health screening is, because maybe not everyone in our audience has ever heard of one.
Sure. In general, screenings are used to determine if somebody has an active disorder. So that would be just like, even just from a medical standpoint. So they'll screen, for diabetes or other things like that. But from a mental health standpoint, it's more like a questionnaire. And generally it's paper, old, kind of old fashioned. They might put some paper screenings online, so it kind of feels like it's high tech, but they tend to be serial. You have to take one at a time. You have to kind of pick and choose what you're screening yourself for. So really the screeners are to try and determine what mental health conditions you have in a kind of question answer format.
Oh, thank you so much. And so for my next question, what is the purpose of a mental health screening and why are they so important in the world of mental health?
So assessing people for mental health can be really time consuming. Like I said, it's kind of that serial process going through one at a time. So, with Connected Mind, we screen for 6 conditions at one time. And a lot of the conditions overlap. So the nice thing about ours is we kind of give you a mild to severe sort of range, or kind of a gas gauge sort of range when you screen yourself. So you might have mild anxiety, but you could have high depression, and you could have substance use on top of that. So from going online and just taking kind of, reading through what different screeners are out there and then trying to pick and choose which ones to take for yourself, we make it just really simple for you to just pop in, do a screen, 6 conditions are determined, your suicide risk is determined, and it makes it just easy for you to kind of assess where you're at from a mental health standpoint.
Yeah, I would just add that you can go into these screenings without having any clue about what's going on. It literally does the work for you, and it kind of teases out the conditions. There's a lot of misdiagnosis that happens. For instance, ADHD can be confused with bipolar. Bipolar is a pretty serious condition that actually needs medication. But they might, because they haven't gone deep enough into the issue of like restlessness and agitation, they don't get to the bipolar aspect of it. So that's what the screening would do, is kind of do that legwork for the doctor, for the mental health professional, for the individual. So yeah.
And the
it's
nice, go ahead. I was going to say, the nice thing is you can actually take the report that's presented to you once you screen with Connected Mind to your doctor. So you'll get kind of a risk report that doesn't have all of the medical jargon on it, which can be really confusing, and the diagnostics sort of stuff. And your doctor can open that up and actually get the full diagnosis and work with you. So it's a really helpful tool to help you open up that conversation with your doctor or a mental health provider.
It's definitely probably streamlines the process so that you can get
Right.
closer to treatment sooner than what would have happened
Exactly.
in the past.
Mhm.
Exactly.
And could one of you expand on the idea of, like, let's say someone is struggling with a mental health challenge, but they're not realizing it, or they don't know what it is yet? Like, how would that look if you think maybe someone has more of a higher risk of depression than they originally realized, but the test is showing that it's higher than they realized, or maybe there's the ADHD, bipolar confusion aspect?
Yeah, I think, again, the one thing to consider is, I think if you have one mental health condition, you're 50% likely to have at least one or more additional. They're very interconnected. And they're also interconnected with our, just our physical health. So the importance of screening yourself, understanding if you have, a mild to severe risk, opening that conversation with a provider if you are feeling like you don't know where to go once you have that result. I don't know if I answered the question, but I think those are kind of some key points to consider why you should screen yourself and kind of understand the severity of your condition and seek help if it's, if it feels like something you can't deal with on your own.
Yeah, the big picture is really the critical part of getting the best health outcome, which would be optimal mental health and physical health, and so you have to know comorbid underlying conditions. And the thing that kind of is woven through a lot of these mental health conditions is substance use, which that becomes very dicey to treat. As if you have a substance use issue, if you don't address that, you won't fix the mental health issue, and vice versa. They can't be, they almost have to be treated at the same time, or by an individual who understands that both conditions exist. This is just a really good way to get the big picture, get the best health outcomes, the best information.
Part of the problem with just your going to your primary care doctor, for the most part, they screen for depression and nothing else. And so you might not be depressed. You might have anxiety and substance use. Well, they might ask you, how many drinks do you have a week? Or, have you take what they call the PHQ-9, which tests for depression, but they're not looking at your suicide risk. They're not looking at, anxiety, substance use, somatic symptom disorder. There's other conditions that they just don't check for.
And with a screening, it goes deeper than just the question, are you depressed? Because it's like, what if we're coming in because we don't know if we're depressed or not?
Right.
And so let me see. So
can I just add something to that? With mental health too, this has a lot of impact on your daily life. So, you have a physical aspect, perhaps, maybe recurring headaches due to untreated anxiety, but, this can start blowing into behavioral aspects where you're literally not, performing or meeting responsibilities in your daily life. So it's just really an important thing to address any underlying mental health, even in its early stages, because they rarely get better with time, without any kind of treatment. And what I mean by treatment is acknowledgement that they exist and that you're doing something, to get better, to achieve that kind of higher end of mental health.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, depression will sometimes, things like depression, anxiety can lead to physical things that, like, so we've heard a lot at Shadow's Edge about people who are so depressed they can't get out of bed. And that leads to a whole other series of other ways it impacts your life. So a mental health screening is important because you don't realize how much it can impact you until you get to that point.
Right.
So,
sometimes it just becomes your status quo. You feel like this is as good as it gets, and you just start accepting feeling rotten about things, it's just the way it is. And that it's just, I'm kind of a firm believer in retraining your brain to try to focus on positive aspects of life, because there's a lot to be negative about, to actually, dwell, you're going to go nuts thinking about just the negative aspects.
So for my next question is, so if for any of our viewers have never actually taken a mental health screening, and they're kind of a little on the fence on what to expect, how does a mental health screening typically go? Like, what do you usually do you have to go to see a doctor to get it? Typically in the past, I know Connected Mind, your tool is free online. But in the past, did you have to go to a doctor? Do you still have to go to the doctor? Just expand on that, just because I know a lot of people have never taken one.
There's a lot of tools online. You can go to like Mental Health America, for instance, or NAMI. They will put some screeners out there, but what you find is they might have 10 or 12 screeners with a little description, and then you just have to kind of pick and choose and guess which ones to take. And you could be there for hours reading descriptions and trying to almost diagnose yourself before you even start taking a screening. So they exist, they're out there. I think sometimes they cause more frustration and confusion than help, unless like, I know I fight depression, I'm just going to check my depression. That maybe is a little bit more kind of a standard, but for people that just are kind of saying, I want to check and see if I do have some mental health concerns, or maybe I am, fighting anxiety and depression. I don't know it. I don't really know what I'm going through. Connected Mind makes it really easy. We have a link you go to, you say, run the test, it pops up on your screen. We ask 8 upfront questions. And if you say no to everything, you're done in under a minute. And you're just like, okay, today I'm good. Life is good today. But we recommend really that you do it, at least quarterly. So you're kind of looking at where you're at ongoing, because life happens.
And so I'm always looking for any free, amazing tools to share with our community regarding mental and emotional health. And I've taken screeners in the past online, and what you were saying about how there's so many, like, it's almost more upsetting to be online that long trying to figure out, like, okay, and then you have to go and look at all the results and compare them. It's like, am I more anxious? Am I more this? And I actually have taken your screener twice just to test it out. And it was really nice. Like I was done within 10 minutes and I was able to go, okay, and both times I got similar but slightly different results because they were several weeks apart. And it really takes out the guesswork. I know this sounds like shameless promotion, but I just hope that it kind of is. It's just a really great tool to, especially if you're sharing it with family and friends. Because if people see how many are on like NAMI and everything else, they're gonna be like, I don't want to do that. And then they won't get the answers they need.
Yeah, it's patient-led, I say patient-led. We started as a clinical tool. That's why sometimes I get into a more of a medical terminology, but so it is based on the DSM-5, which is a psychological measurement for
standard,
right? But so it's almost like being interviewed by a doctor who would, if he's listening to you, won't keep asking the same question over and over and over and over again, so we eliminate the frustration that way by paring it down to the least number of questions we have to ask to rule out something or rule it in, so there's a lot of care in our algorithms to pair these questions to just the absolute minimum. And we're going to do additional work on that to really incorporate AI to get it to just a few questions and you'll be done, but that's still off on the horizon, but we're still making that effort to get the tests simplified, and they're really not bad. They're I think what is the level?
8 upfront questions.
No, but the reading level is 8th grade, I think.
Oh, right. Yeah.
8th grade level reading. So it's anyone can.
No, I would say 13 and older. So that's 6th grade.
Yeah. Which is perfect because that's when a lot of mental health challenges start becoming relevant to someone is about that age group.
Yeah.
So really, if you are just needing to check in on your niece or nephew, son, daughter, and you just want to go, hey, you want to try this out just to see where you're at? It's not anything to like, I don't want to say advanced, the kids are kids are always crazy smart in one way or another, like their emotional intelligence or traditional book academically, but it's that's the best way I could describe it. But so
there's a lot of research about people with their devices are much more honest than face to face with someone. So you're getting a better answer from people when they're kind of speaking with their, interacting with their mobile devices, and that you get a better test result as far as more honest result.
That brings up a question I have for you, because I know you mentioned this was a clinical tool originally. Was it where someone went into a mental health facility or a doctor's office and they like took the screening on the iPad?
Yeah, it's mainly to help primary care because they have way too much to fit into like a 20-minute exam, and to put mental health on their plate, they just can't do it justice. They can't do the assessments that they really should be doing. So they end up, like Peggy said, screening for depression, which gets some of the people, but ignores others that might, need additional aid.
And so I know you were saying that people tend to be more honest and open about answering questions about themselves on mobile devices. Did you feel that even in the doctor's office on the iPad, they wrote just as honest, or is it easier when people are at home on their computer? I imagine especially for young people, it's easier at home on your phone to do that. But I wonder if when it was in the clinical tool setting, if they were just as open and honest with answering those questions.
Yeah, they are, because you're not, especially if you feel kind of stigmatized, have some stigma relating to mental health, or you feel like your concerns might be silly or that kind of thing. You're just, you're not being interrogated by a person. That just makes it more more open and free to really reveal things about yourself, which could be, kind of personal, maybe kind of embarrassing and that. And without, I just think that the data that we collect is going to be a better set than kind of an impromptu question answer with your physician in a time crunch situation. It just feels that way, but
and I think a lot of people go, if they're face to face with their doctor, they don't want to say, hey, I'm having trouble getting out of bed. They just don't bring it up, right? They just, it's like, I have headaches. That's what it might come through to their doctor as, right? A physical symptom, and not, I may be, fighting some sort of, depression or anxiety. It's just a physical symptom. And if the doctor doesn't, again, in that 15, 20-minute time frame, have the, thought process to go, maybe I better look deeper at this person's mental health, they slip through the cracks.
Especially, like the exams with the doctors actually in the room, like is maximum 20 minutes typically, unless there's like an obvious problem. And I've heard this several times, is a lot of the times a doctor has to ask the same question like 3 or 4 times to get the right, like the real answer. Truest, the real answer. And they'd have to sit there and go, are you depressed? Are you depressed? Are you depressed? No one's going to answer that.
Right.
And, maybe someone's also, it's not like they think they're silly or it's the mental health stigma, but maybe they just don't want to worry their loved ones and they just feel like they're being selfish by asking for help, but it's not selfish. So what's nice about Connected Mind is when I took it, I enjoyed seeing that it was actually anonymous unless you chose to like print it out or share it. And I think that's going to push a lot of people to be more open and honest with themselves on that test. And so my next question, would you suggest sharing a mental health screening tool with others? Like, for example, let's say a parent is worried about their teen because like they're showing the obvious signs of depression, like they don't want to get out of bed. I mean, beyond a teenager, they like to stay up and play video games. But let's say they're not getting out of bed and they just aren't themselves and they're showing the regular signs of something's wrong, but they're kind of just giving the typical answer of, I'm fine. Don't worry, mom, I'm fine. Is this something that you would recommend, like a parent could recommend to their teen? Or let's say alternatively, let's say you have a coworker that's not themselves lately and you're worried, but you also don't want to like shove it down their throat or anything. How would you suggest this and how would you go about it?
I think that's a great question. I would say definitely suggest it. And, we have a resource page. You could just point people to our resource page and just say, I have found Connected Minds resource page to be really helpful. And, right there at the tippy top, it says try a screening. It could be as, kind of sneak it in that way, or you could just be right up front with them and say, just go here, try screening. It's anonymous and you might learn something great about yourself or something about yourself that needs care, so it's just, I think you could do it either way, depending on maybe how you know the person.
And it also depends on, many people are still struggling with mental health stigma. So if they do react and go, hey, I'm not crazy, don't be offended. They may still take it later. They just might react a little more defensive about it. And it's nothing, of course, go with caution, but it's most of the time, it's nothing that can be helped from your perspective.
And you could even just be as simple as, I have found this really helpful, kind of a cool resource, check it out, and let people maybe come to that decision. But again, it's super simple from our resource page to find that link and try a screen.
And this is my part that I've been looking forward to, is asking each of you, can you share a memorable story from your experiences at Connected Mind? Because, at Shadow's Edge, we work with so many amazing people and we have all these stories that when we think about those days, it just gives you that bubbly feeling when you come into work, when you think about that. And I want to hear what your experiences are at Connected Mind that make you more excited to continue the work that you're doing.
We had one clinic down in Texas that gives via tablet in their clinic a screening to every patient. And one of the patients showed signs of depression and suicide potential. And so the doctor, discussed that with him, and the person actually started crying and said, I was really just going to come here and say I was having trouble sleeping, get some sleeping pills, and I plan to kill myself tonight. And let's say I tear up when I tell that story. And I think that first time a doctor that uses Connected Mind in their clinic gets one of those stories, it hits them so that they call us and tell us about it, because I think in their minds, they're also thinking, which ones have I missed, right? Who have I let slip through the cracks because we haven't been screening our patients? And Kathy, maybe you can tell the school district story.
Yeah, in the early stages, we were rolling this out had an idea of rolling this out to schools so that the guidance department or the intervention counselors could use this on students that they felt were at risk and within a week of rolling it out, one of the students had a plan to commit suicide, and they were able to intervene and prevent that. So another life saved. That's how we feel. We truly feel like we're saving and improving, of course, lives. And that makes it makes it all worthwhile. So you can see Peggy and I are at the end of our careers, not in the beginning of our careers, and we've worked a long time to get to a place where we really are feeling a lot of job satisfaction in what we're doing. So definitely the human aspect, helping people is what really is the most satisfying, enjoyable part of Connected Mind. And the technology is cool, I admit. We're really kind of leading edge. We're set up, like I mentioned before, for to integrate with a lot of different, to integrate with other health systems and to explore the AI aspect of mental health. So there's a lot of cool work with this company.
Yeah, and Kathy and I both have IT backgrounds, so we kind of come from that computer. So the techie stuff kind of always gets us excited.
Gets a little geek out a little bit.
Little geek out on that.
Yeah. And not to belabor it, but there's just a lot of intelligence built into this tool that is it's pretty. The calculating of scores, how to proceed with the next question. It's more than just translating paper tests into an electronic format. There's just a lot of algorithms moving and making decisions and that. So it's a really cool thing.
And I love so something I appreciated is because as the community manager for Shadows Edge, a lot of what I do is I write the text both on social media and in the game, like weekly art challenges. I have to write a lot of text, basically kind of convincing young people who might be a little bit more shut down emotionally, not wanting to deal with their challenge, to open up to themselves. And something I appreciated about the screening tool that you guys that your team created, is that it's got like an emotional intelligence with how they ask the questions, rather than a lot of them in the past have sounded very robotic, but this one's very emotionally intelligent. So when I recommend it in our game to players, like, hey, maybe you should take this, it'll help you see within yourself, I know I'm sending them to a screener that kind of like matches like the sort of like the true honesty that we need in mental health.
It's awesome.
Agree. Yeah, that is awesome.
And I know we talked about it earlier of like how Peggy, I believe you said like quarterly is a good idea to take the mental health screener. For, let's say I'm thinking specifically for teens and young adults who are in major life transitions, like changing schools, going to college.
Yeah.
Like I'm sitting here imagining the potential of maybe it's good to take it every few weeks.
Yeah,
Not even this
definitely
quarter.
when you have a stressful time or a big change, I would definitely recommend taking it more often. I think quarterly is a minimum.
Minimum.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking for our healthcare workers right now, I imagine like that it would be great for them to be taking this and staying on top of their mental health
Exactly.
while they're so busy right now.
And teachers, I think it's a big thing for
Teachers.
teachers, educators, because I mean, they've also had this, the mix up in the, trying to get everything switched over to online, and then they're back in school and they're trying to do it 2 days at school. And I mean, it's a lot of juggling. And I think between those two, it's been a lot of upset, healthcare and education.
Oh, we have a question from the audience. Someone asked, how would you recommend someone goes about trying to get this tech into one's local primary clinics? This is fabulous and so necessary because let's be honest, those mental health screening questions that are required to be asked by a primary care setting by a doctor feel so perfunctory, and that they honestly are just hoping that your answers are all no. So that's a very good question. How would you recommend getting this into, like, let's say you're a patient and you're like, my doctor would love this in their clinic. How would we go about mentioning that?
One thing to do would be take the screen and bring your results into the doctor and say, there's a code on there, like we said, they can unlock that. It opens the door for them to see Connected Mind and then to start having that conversation with you. That would be a great first step to get it into a doctor's hands.
I guess it's similar to like community activism and co-ops. You just kind of
It
have
is.
to go to someone in charge and be like, I found this really cool thing. You'd be crazy not to have it yourself.
One of my dreams as kind of community outreach is to get it into especially rural, and I'm not saying that, inner city or, suburbans don't need it, but rural is really rough. Some of them don't have even a psychologist, that anybody could go to get it into the schools and the clinics, because then you have this kind of community of support that's going on, and then, kind of drive that, and of course out, anywhere that we can do it. But I'm really trying to focus that on rural areas right now, just to get that kind of combined in the school and in the clinics.
Oh yeah, like I grew up in a rural area myself, and it wasn't until high school where we went into a busier city that I started hearing about mental health. So I'm imagining like people who still haven't really like moved out of the rural areas, they could really benefit from that. And then the same person asked this question, they beat me to it, is would it be the same with school districts? When you approach a school district, do you go to the individual school principal or to the school district head, or do you call someone in your state education department? How do you usually go about it?
I've been working with superintendents and trying to get it looked at from an overall standpoint, give it to your educators and your students. And there's just all kinds of statistics about if the teachers are mentally healthy and they're trained, the students, it gets passed on to the students. The students are more likely to graduate. I mean, there's just all kinds of things that kind of flow down from starting with your educators and rolling that right into your students. And so
it's the same with parents too. If
parents,
a parent,
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, we'd like to see, I think what it needs a new look, how we approach mental health. The way we're doing it now is not getting people connected to the care they need. And it seems like there's a dam, or, some barriers to access because the identification piece isn't there. So, if we can help people help themselves, then the next step is to get them, to the right resources, which is part of this whole thing. You can identify it, but you also have to treat it too, or support your mental health, or, so I think that should be our focus, is empowering the individual to take care of this.
And advocate.
Yep, advocate. And of course, make sure there's resources available for them to go to. Make sure that that path to resources is clear, you know. And that's why we want to see it, you know, we want people to share the link. We want them to pass it around. We'd like the schools to post it on their website. Because again, it's a completely anonymous test. The individual who's taking it owns the results. The schools or whoever manages that, you know, link cannot read an individual's results or scores. They can optionally get an aggregated like population health report, which shows the overall kind of mental health state of their school, which is great for developing programs and supports for their specific population. Let's just say they've got, you know, a lot of anxious students, which is kind of right now, there's a lot of anxiety out there. And so if there's a school that doesn't have anxiety, they're blessed, I guess. But you know, so then the emphasis is on, okay, let's have some programming that addresses anxiety, get some awareness, get some, you know, things in place for that health need.
Right, and the cool thing about it is we can give kind of what we call unique links. So there could be, you know, maybe, you know, coming into middle school, 6th grade, we know that's a kind of a tough period for kids.
That's a big transition period.
Yeah, it's a transition period. So maybe there's a link that's specific to 6th graders. So you can say, all right, they have high anxiety. We're going to just focus on programs that support anxiety. Whereas maybe, you know, 10th, 11th, and 12th, I'm just making these up. You know, I don't have any statistics about this, but maybe, you know, maybe they're more depressed, right? So you focus your programs on that. These links allow them to really look at that subset of students and determine, you know, where should we put our dollars to support our students.
That would be really great for when you're trying to determine within a school district. It seems like we have a very high anxiety population. Maybe we could add more programs after school. Maybe we can add more of the arts, things like that. And I was just sitting here and thinking of how I remember being a teenager, and one of the big things was during study hall, they would try to push us to do certain activities. And I'm just sitting here imagining study hall would be a great time in schools. Like I think a lot of schools now, they do it like near the end of the day, like there's eight periods, and during 7th period it's like homework and everything like that. I'm sitting here imagining that's a great time for all the classes take turns going to the computer lab, and it's a perfect time for everyone to get that opportunity.
Yeah, they want to do it.
And so I know we're ending a little early, but so I have a few other questions I know we didn't discuss ahead of time. One question I have is, what is your self-care plan for today? This is my favorite thing to ask all of our webinar guests lately. What is your activity you're going to do to make sure your mental health is healthy today?
Well, I have 2 dogs, 2 big dogs. So my favorite self-care is I go out and walk with my dogs. I especially enjoy my AM morning walk with them, and, you know, kind of their little happy tail wags, you know, brings joy to my heart. And I always try to spend at least 15 minutes a day just trying to meditate and just kind of hit that calm spot, because life does gets hectic and you're going in multiple directions. So just trying to take that time to, you know, slow down, quiet the mind, take a deep breath, helps a lot.
What about you, Kathy?
Well, I'm working on it on self-care. It's one of those things where I just have a kind of a fierce introvert streak, and I kind of isolate, and I realize that that's not a good thing for me for days and days on end. So basically, my goal every night is to get in contact either with a family member, an old friend, and just talk, just have a conversation instead of everything being electronic, texting somebody, sending them a message on Facebook and that, just having a real conversation. So this kind of gets me grounded and reconnected with people.
Even if that means, like, for me, my husband and I will, at the end of the day, I don't know if you've ever heard of the card game golf, where you have the three rows of three and you have to, it's nice to, at the end of the day, settle down without devices and just play golf.
Yeah.
I have to specify the card game because people will be like, how do you play golf in your apartment? And I love asking that question about what is your self-care activity for today, because if there's anything anyone has taken from any of our webinars, especially this one, is that your mental and emotional health is just as important as your physical. You wouldn't have a broken arm and go, I wonder why my arm hurts, and not get it checked. Or if you're possibly having a heart attack, you wouldn't not ask a doctor about it or go to the hospital. Your emotional and mental health are almost the exact same thing. It's getting a mental health screening can help just as much as taking your vitamins, checking your weight, checking your blood pressure.
Yep.
And if there's anything anyone takes away from this webinar, it's that, and that it's one of those things. I think word of mouth is really going to be a really great thing of breaking mental health stigma. So if you think someone in your life is going through a hard time, just talk to them, be like, hey, I found this really cool tool. And we're going to send out a recording of this webinar to everyone who signed up. And so that way you can watch it again, you can share it with your friends, and we'll include a link to Connected Mind as well as Shadow's Edge, because your mental health care doesn't start and end with the screening or the immediate care after. It's going to be a lifelong thing to care for, just like your body. And we hope that you use Shadow's Edge also in unison, so that way you can have a fun way to work and reflect on yourself. And so and I think in a weird way that we kind of work in the most rewarding field right now, is that we get to help people feel better and learn how to work on themselves.
I agree.
And I would love to open up for questions to the audience. We answered the first two. I would love to see if anyone has any questions for Peggy or Kathy. And if anyone needs a certificate of participation, they are always welcome to email me at Lacey, Lacey, @shadowsedge.com, and I will be getting that certificate to you for extra credit hours for work. And did either of you have any questions for me or for the audience? Anything like that?
I don't think so.
I am going to learn more about Shadow's Edge. I kind of was brought in a little bit after the fact. So, but I just, sounds like such a tremendous opportunity to get to kids and to kind of exploit their love for video games, and at the same time do something healthy for themselves. And so this is
I imagine both of you have this this challenge of being so proud of the tool that your team has made that you have to kind of stop yourself from like talking to everybody about it. I'll be in Walmart and there's a checkout line and someone has their teenager with them. I'm like, I work for a video game company, and I just want to share this with you. And I have to stop myself. And I totally forgot to mention that right now we actually are doing an in-game art challenge based on mental health screenings. So we're basically asking players to kind of reflect on themselves and then to take the Connected Mind screener and then to come back in the game and then make an art piece without text based on if they were surprised by the results, if they weren't surprised, and just the emotions around that. We've gotten some really cool art submissions from our players. Yeah, and if you haven't tried out our game, you can go into Shadowgram. It's the in-game it's sort of like Instagram, and you can see what all these young people are making based on their
Wow.
results. They aren't sharing their actual results. We don't want any privacy being pushed, but just their emotions and how they feel
Right.
about it.
Yeah,
Nice.
a lot of fun.
Mhm.
It
Yeah.
doesn't look like we have any questions. So it was so amazing speaking with you ladies. This was so much fun. It was a great way to spend the first day of fall.
Yes.
And
Yes.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Fun. Thank you.
And thank you everyone for joining us. And again, if you want a certificate of participation, you can email me at Lacey@shadowsedge.com. And that's LACEY. And then Shadows Edge. It will be included in the follow-up email where we send out the recording.
Great.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.